The white room had no doors, no windows, no shadows. Doctor and Riley opened her eyes and found herself lying on a floor that felt like glass, but looked like nothing at all. She sat up slowly. Her head hurt. The last thing she remembered was finishing her research notes at the Antarctic station. Now she was here, wherever here was. Subject 7 Earth, a calm voice said from everywhere and nowhere. You have been selected, and stood up. Her legs felt weak, but steady enough. Selected for what? Where am I? You are aboard Criterion 7, a research station operated by the Galactic Evaluation Council. You represent your species in the Universal Sentience Evaluation. And laughed. It was not a happy laugh. Aliens? You expect me to believe aliens kidnapped me for some kind of test. A section of the wall became transparent. Beyond it, and saw stars. More stars than she had ever seen. And between them, shapes that could only be ships. Hundreds of ships. Believe what you wish, the voice said. The evaluation has already begun. You have been observed for 72 standard hours. And felt cold. 3 days. She had been watched for 3 days without knowing it. What happens if I fail this test? Your species will be classified and processed according to council protocols. And if I pass, no species from your region has ever passed. A door appeared in the wall. It slid open to reveal a long corridor lined with windows. Through each window, it could see other rooms like hers. Other beings sat in them. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nothing she could describe. Most of them looked afraid. She walked down a corridor. At the end stood a figure made of crystal. Light moved through its body like blood through veins. When it communicated, colors flashed in patterns and somehow understood. I am Overseer Paleth, it said through the colors. I will administer your evaluation. What kind of test is this? The first challenge will begin now. The floor beneath and changed. Symbols appeared. 3 paths lit up before her, each marked with strange writing that translated itself in her mind. Path 1 led to a door marked, Save Yourself. Path 2 led to Save Another. Path 3 led to Save No One. Choose, Paleth said, and looked at each path. She walked toward the first one, then stopped. She examined the second, then the third. She stood in the center for a long moment. The paths are meaningless, she said finally. There is no context, no information about who needs saving or why. This is not a test of ethics. It is a test of obedience. You want to see if I will choose without questioning. Paleth's colors flickered rapidly. You must choose a path. No. All subjects must choose. The test is flawed, and said. Any answer I give tells you nothing about who I am. It only tells you that I am willing to play a game with rules that make no sense. She sat down on the floor and crossed her arms. I will not choose until you give me a reason to choose. A real reason, not a simulation, not a trick. The silence lasted a very long time. Then Paleth spoke through the station's communication system and heard the words in her mind and through speakers she could not see. Evaluation Council. This is Overseer Paleth. Subject 7 Earth has completed evaluation parameters ahead of schedule. The subject has refused standard protocols. Pattern recognition indicates anomaly status. Recommend immediate termination of assessment. And felt her stomach drop. Termination. Paleth's crystal form shifted. The colors became darker, slower. Anomaly subjects cannot be classified. They do not fit our models. They represent unpredictable variables in galactic stability. What happens to anomalies? They are archived. Archived meaning what? Paleth did not answer with colors. Instead, another wall became transparent. Behind it, and saw rows and rows of pods stretching into darkness. Inside each pod, a frozen figure. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Archived, Paleth repeated and stood up. Her fear was real now, but so was something else. Something harder. You have tested thousands of species, built this whole system, created pods to freeze anyone who does not fit your predictions. She stepped toward Paleth, and not once did anyone ask if maybe the test was the problem. The test has functioned for 4,000 years. Functioning is not the same as working, and pointed at the frozen anomalies. How many species have you quarantined? How many civilizations have you stopped because they did not choose the right door? Palath's colors went completely still. I want to take the real test, and said, the one you are afraid to give anyone. The one that might prove your whole system is broken. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Palath moved. Its crystal body turned toward a door that had not existed before. Follow me, it said. There is someone you need to meet. The door opened onto darkness, and took a breath and stepped through. Behind her, the white room's lights went out one by one. 300 frozen faces stared at and through glass that was older than human civilization. She walked between the pods while Palath glided beside her, its crystal body casting faint rainbows on the floor. Why show me this? And asked, because you asked to understand. Most subjects do not ask. They simply react, and stopped at one pod. Inside, a small creature with 6 eyes and fur the color of autumn leaves floated in suspension. It looked peaceful. It also looked like it had been here for a very long time. What did this one do wrong? Species 4891, Telani. Their representative answered every question with another question. Our models could not predict their responses. Anomaly status was assigned. You froze an entire species because one person asked too many questions. Palath's colors shifted to something and was beginning to recognize as discomfort. The representative's behavior indicated potential instability in their species. The council voted for preventive quarantine and kept walking. She passed pods containing beings of every shape and size. Some looked terrifying. Others looked gentle. All of them were frozen. All of them had failed a test that was designed to make them fail. What about Earth? She asked. What was our classification before you even tested me? Palath stopped moving. The silence told, and everything. We were already marked, were we not? You never expected us to pass. Earth was pre-classified as Category 7. High violence potential, high aggression markers. The evaluation was a formality before implementing containment protocols. Containment meaning what? Your solar system would be enclosed in a barrier field. Your species would be allowed to develop, but never permitted to leave. And laughed, but there was no humor in it. So, the test was fake from the start. You were going to cage us no matter what I did. The test is never fake. But certain outcomes are statistically predetermined. And turned to face Palath directly. Then why am I still here? Why did you bring me to see this instead of just freezing me with the others? Palath's colors cycled through patterns and had never seen before. When it finally spoke, the translation felt uncertain, like words being chosen carefully. Because in 4,000 years of evaluations, no subject has ever done what you did. You refused the test. You questioned its foundation. You demanded meaning instead of accepting structure. The crystal being moved closer. I have overseen 600 evaluations. I have never been uncertain before. You make me uncertain. And studied the overseer. Under all that crystal and light, she saw something familiar. Doubt. The same doubt she felt when she questioned her own research. The same doubt that made scientists better at finding truth. Show me the scoring system, she said. The actual data. How decisions are made. That information is restricted. You already broke rules by bringing me here. Break one more. Palath hesitated. Then it touched a wall, and the wall became a screen filled with numbers and charts and lines connecting species to outcomes. And was not a mathematician, but she understood patterns. And the pattern here was clear. The weights are fixed, she said. Every species that shows independence gets negative points. Every species that questions authority loses points. Your test does not measure danger. It measures obedience. The system was designed to prevent war. Obedient species do not start wars. No, they just suffer under species that do. And pointed at the data. Look at this. The species with the highest scores are also the ones with seats on your council. The ones making the rules. Your test is not about protecting the galaxy. It is about protecting power. Palath's form flickered for a moment and thought it might shatter. These conclusions are not supported by, they're supported by your own data. And step back from the screen. Your test measures what we are at one moment in time. It ignores what we choose to become. Look at humanity's history. Yes, we were violent. We still are sometimes. But the violence is decreasing. Generation by generation, we are choosing differently. Does your precious system account for that? Change is unpredictable. Unpredictable variables cannot be trusted. Then trust is your problem, not ours. And walked past Paleth toward a door at the far end of the archive. She did not know where it led. She did not care. Subject 7 Earth, Paleth called out. Where are you going? And stopped but did not turn around. I'm going to find whoever built this broken system. And I'm going to make them explain why they are so afraid of people like me. The first observer has been dormant for 4,000 years. No one wakes the first observer. Now, unturned. A small smile crossed her face. Good. Then we'll be well rested when I ask my questions. She pushed through the door and disappeared into the darkness beyond. Behind her, Paleth stood among the frozen anomalies. Its colors shifted to something new, something that might have been the beginning of hope. Then it followed. The corridor led downward, and counted her steps, because counting gave her something to do besides think about how far from Earth she was. She reached 3,000 before the corridor opened into a chamber that made her stop breathing. The room was a sphere. She stood on a platform in its center, with nothing visible below or above except darkness and distant lights that might have been stars or machines or something else entirely. In the middle of the sphere floated a shape that hurt to look at. It changed every time and blinked. One moment it seemed humanoid. The next it was geometric, then organic, then nothing she had words for. The first observer, Paleth said quietly. Creator of the evaluation system. Dormant since the end of the Consolidation War. How do I wake it up? You do not. It wakes when it chooses to. And stared at the shifting form. What was the Consolidation War? The war that nearly destroyed all sentient life in this galaxy. 47 species participated. 39 were exterminated. The survivors created the council. They created the evaluation system. They created rules so that nothing like it could ever happen again. And nodded slowly. Fear built systems. She understood that. Humans had done the same thing after every great war. The problem was that systems built from fear often created new kinds of suffering. What species started the war? Paleth's colors dimmed. That information is restricted. Everything important seems to be restricted. A sound filled the chamber. Not a voice exactly. More like meaning pressed directly into N's mind. The first observer had awakened. Human, it said. The word carried weight, as if it had examined everything about her species in that single moment. You carry violence in your cells, war in your history, destruction in your potential. Why should I speak with you? And forced herself to look directly at the shifting form despite the discomfort. Because I'm not asking you to judge humanity. I am asking you to judge your own creation. The first observer pulsed. Interest? Anger? And could not tell. You build a system to prevent war, she continued. But your system does not prevent suffering. It just moves it somewhere else. Every species you quarantine. Every anomaly you freeze. Every world you seal away. That is suffering too. Quieter suffering. Hidden suffering. But still real. Acceptable losses to prevent extinction-level conflict. Acceptable to whom? Not to them. And gestured vaguely toward the archive full of frozen beings. Did you ask any of them if they accepted? The first observer moved closer and felt pressure on her mind, as if something vast was leaning against her thoughts. You are small, brief. Your species has existed for an eye blink of cosmic time. What can you possibly understand about preventing galactic war? I understand that prevention is not the same as solution, and held her ground even as the pressure increased. You build a cage and called it peace. But cages breed resentment. Eventually, someone will break out. And when they do, they will remember every year they spent locked away. Something changed in the chamber. The distant lights flickered and felt the pressure ease slightly. A creature approaches, the first observer said, and turned. From a shadow she had not noticed, a small form emerged. Furred, six-eyed, about the size of a large cat. It moved with the caution of something that had spent a very long time hiding. Doss, Paleth said, colors flashing with surprise. You survived. The small creature looked at Paleth, then at the first observer. 200 years, Doss said in a voice like dry leaves. 200 years hiding in maintenance tunnels and forgotten storage rooms. Watching evaluations. Learning how the system works. Waiting for someone stupid enough to challenge it. You were marked as an anomaly, and said, I asked the wrong questions. Like you. Doss moved to stand beside Anne. I have been watching you since you arrived. You're the first one who might actually change things. The first observer's form shifted again. Change requires power. The human has none. The human has something better, Doss said. She has found the flaw in your logic, and she is too stubborn to pretend she has not. And looked at the small creature, then at Paleth, then at the vast and ancient being floating above them all. There's a way to challenge this system formally, she said. Is there not? Something built into the original design. A failsafe in case the system itself became corrupted. The first observer was silent for a long moment. The right of demonstration, it finally said. Any subject may invoke it, but no one ever has, because no one has ever survived it. And smiled. It was not a gentle smile. I want to invoke it. Paleth's colors went pale. Doss made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. The first observer simply watched with its impossible form. Very well, it said. The council will assemble. You will have 1 hour to demonstrate why your species deserves reconsideration. If you fail, you and every human alive will face immediate containment. And if I succeed, the first observer did not answer, but and saw something in its shifting patterns, something that looked almost like hope. Then perhaps, it said quietly, we can finally fix what I broke. The council chamber was built for intimidation, and understood this the moment she stepped inside. Seats rose in tiers around a central platform, each tier holding representatives from species she could not name. Some were massive, others were barely visible. All of them watched her with expressions she could not read. She stood alone on the platform. Paleth had been forbidden from joining her. Doss had disappeared back into the shadows. The first observer floated somewhere above, watching but not participating. A being made of dark metal and bright energy took position across from her. Its voice cut through the chamber like a blade. I am High Arbiter Melas. I speak for the council. I judge all demonstrations. I have judged 947. None have succeeded, and kept her voice steady. Then I will be the first. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Some species laughed with sounds, others with colors or movements or frequencies, and felt in her bones. All of it meant the same thing. They thought she was foolish. You have 1 hour, Melas said. Begin. And had planned to argue for humanity, to list their achievements, their art, their science, their capacity for love and growth and change. But standing here, facing these ancient species who had already decided humanity was dangerous, she realized that argument would fail. They did not care about human potential. They only cared about human threat. She changed her approach. Before I demonstrate anything, and said, I have questions for the council. Melas's form flickered. Demonstrations are not interrogations. The right of demonstration grants me 1 hour to make my case. I choose to use that hour as I see fit, and turn to address the assembled species. How many of you remember your own evaluations? Silence. Then, slowly, a few beings shifted in their seats. Species 12 Venery, and said, pointing at a crystalline being similar to Paleth. You were evaluated 6,000 years ago. Your species was marked for quarantine due to aggressive territorial behavior. But your representative convinced the council that territory disputes were manageable. You were given a chance. Do you remember? The Venery representative glowed faintly. I was not alive then, but the records exist. We were given mercy. Mercy, and repeated. Or opportunity? She turned to another section. Species 89 Holeth. Your evaluation showed high manipulation potential, psychological warfare capabilities. You should have been contained, but you argued that manipulation could be used for diplomacy instead of harm. The council agreed. Now your species handles most trade negotiations. Do you remember? A being like living smoke shifted in its seat. We remember, and kept going, species after species. She had spent her time with Doswell. The small creature had shown her records, histories, patterns, and the pattern was clear. 73% of the species currently sitting on this council, and said loudly, would fail if evaluated by today's standards. The criteria have changed. The weights have shifted. What was acceptable then is punished now. And the common factor in every shift is simple. She pointed directly at Melos. The changes always benefit those already in power. The chamber erupted. Species shouted and flashed and vibrated with anger. Some directed at Anne. Some, she noticed, directed at each other. Old tensions were surfacing. Old resentments. The system had kept them buried, and had just provided a shovel. Silence, Melos commanded. The chamber obeyed, but reluctantly. These accusations are baseless. They are based on your own records. And pulled a small device from her pocket. Doss had given it to her. 847 manual adjustments to the evaluation criteria over 4,000 years. Every single one approved by species already on the council. Every single one making it harder for new species to join. She activated the device. Data streamed across every screen in the chamber. Numbers, dates, names, evidence that could not be denied. This is not a test, and said into the chaos. It is a rigged game, and I'm not the first to notice. I am just the first stupid enough to say it out loud. Melos moved toward her. Energy crackled around its form. You have violated council protocols. You have accessed restricted information. You have incited discord among member species. The High Arbiter loomed over her. Your demonstration is over. Your species is condemned. No, the voice came from above. The first observer descended into the chamber, its impossible form drawing every eye. The demonstration is not over, it said. She still has time remaining, and she has proven something I should have seen long ago. The ancient being turned to face Melos. She has proven that my creation became a weapon. I built it to protect. You turned it into a cage. Melos stood frozen. First observer. You have been dormant for, I have been watching, waiting, hoping someone would finally see what I was too afraid to fix. The first observer looked at Anne. Finish your demonstration, human. Tell them what you want. And took a breath. Her whole species depended on what she said next. I want a new system, she said. Not built on fear. Built on growth. Mutual evaluation. Every species watching every other species. Not for threat. For potential. For progress. For the chance to become better than we were. The chamber was silent. Give humanity 10 years, and continued. Let's live among you. Work with you. If we fail, contain us forever. But if we succeed, you must admit your system was broken. And you must help us build something better. Melos looked at the first observer. The first observer looked at the council. The council looked at each other, and slowly, impossibly, and saw the first votes begin to change. The vote split the council down the middle. 47 species voted to give humanity a chance. 46 voted for immediate containment. The tiebreaker fell to High Arbiter Melos, and watched the metal being stand motionless for a long moment. Energy flickered across its surface like lightning looking for somewhere to strike. The human has manipulated this council, Melos said finally. She has used stolen information to create division. This is exactly the behavior the evaluation system was designed to prevent. The system was designed to prevent war, the first observer replied. Not questions, not challenges, not truth. Truth. Melos turned toward the ancient being. You want truth? Here is truth. The chamber's screens changed. New data appeared. Images of devastation on a scale and could barely comprehend. Worlds burned to ash. Species reduced to memory. Violence so total that entire star systems were left empty. The Consolidation War, Melos said. 39 species destroyed. Billions of lives ended. And do you know what started it? And shook her head. A species that passed every evaluation. Perfect scores. No warning signs. They were welcomed into the galaxy. Given resources. Given trust. Melos moved closer to Anne. Within 50 years, they had conquered or destroyed everything they touched. We barely survived. The survivors built this system because trust without verification is suicide, and looked at the images of destruction. She understood now. Melas was not evil. Melas was afraid. The entire council was afraid. They had seen what happened when they gave an unknown species the benefit of the doubt. What was that species called? And asked quietly, Melas paused. The energy patterns shifted to something and recognized as pain. They called themselves the Unified. They believed they were bringing order to chaos, salvation to the unworthy. They saw other species as problems to be solved. Melas looked directly at Anne. Your species has similar patterns, similar beliefs, similar capacity for violence justified by certainty, and nodded slowly. You are right. The chamber went silent. Humans have done terrible things, and continued. We have conquered, enslaved, destroyed. We have built empires on bones and called it progress. I will not stand here and pretend otherwise. Palitha's colors flickered with concern. Doss, hidden somewhere in the chamber, made a worried sound. But, and said, we have also changed. Every generation questions the one before. Every century, we look back at our history and feel shame for what we did. That shame matters. It means we know we were wrong. It means we were trying to be better. She walked toward Melas, closing the distance between them. The Unified believed they were perfect, that their way was the only way. That is why they were dangerous. And stopped an arm's length from the High Arbiter. I do not believe humans are perfect. I do not believe any species is perfect. That is why I am asking for a chance to prove ourselves. Not because I think we will succeed, because I think we have to try. Melas stood motionless. The energy patterns had gone completely still. And if you fail, then you contain us. Forever. No appeals. No second chances. But you will have given us a fair test. A real test. Not a system designed to fail us before we even began. From above, the first observer spoke. I will support this proposal. I will dismantle the evaluation protocols I created and help build new ones. Protocols based on growth instead of prediction. Potential instead of threat. Palith moved onto the platform. Its colors were brighter than and had ever seen them. I will stand with the human. I have overseen hundreds of evaluations. I have sent dozens of species into quarantine. I did it because I believed the system was just. The crystalline being turned to face the council. I was wrong, and I would rather be uncertain than complicit. One by one, other representatives began to move. Some joined in on the platform. Others stayed in their seats, but raised signals of support. The division in the chamber was shifting. Not toward agreement exactly. Toward possibility, Melas watched it all. The High Arbiter's form flickered between states, as if something inside was fighting against itself. The Unified said similar things, Melas said quietly. They spoke of cooperation, unity, growth. Then they burned worlds, and met the being's gaze without flinching. Then watch us, she said, not from a distance, not through evaluations and reports. Watch us directly, live among us. See how we really are. And if you see us becoming what you fear, stop us. You have the power. You have the weapons. Use them if we prove you right. She paused. But give us the chance to prove you wrong. The chamber held its breath. Melas raised one arm. The gesture was simple, but carried absolute authority. 10 years, the High Arbiter said. Humans will be permitted to travel, work, and live among council species. They will be monitored constantly. Any sign of the patterns we fear will result in immediate containment. And exhaled slowly. Thank you. Do not thank me, Melas said. I'm giving you enough rope to hang yourselves. I expect you will use it. And smiled. It was not a kind smile, but it was honest. I expect we will surprise you. Behind her, Doss emerged from the shadows. The small creature moved to stand beside and Palith. We are all anomalies now, Doss said quietly. The question is what we do with it. And looked at her strange companions. A crystalline overseer, a hidden survivor, a traumatized arbiter, and herself, a scientist from a small blue world that had just been given 10 years to prove it deserved to exist at IT was not much time that IT would have to be enough. 10 years can change everything or nothing. and learned this truth slowly, one day at a time. Across a galaxy that had reluctantly opened its doors, she stood in a spaceport on a world whose name she still could not pronounce correctly. Around her, beings of every shape moved through the crowds, and among them, humans. Engineers heading to construction projects, teachers traveling to schools, doctors carrying supplies to clinics, ordinary people doing ordinary things in extraordinary places. Ambassador Riley, a familiar pattern of light, appeared beside her. Paleth had changed over the decade. Its crystal form was warmer now, shot through with colors it had learned from human friends. The council is assembling. Your final report is due. And nodded. I know. They walked together through corridors that connected worlds, and remembered the first time a human had walked these paths. The stairs, the fear, the whispered calculations about how quickly things would go wrong. Are you nervous? Paleth asked, terrified, and admitted, 10 years of hoping we would be enough. Now we find out if we were. The council chamber looked different now. The intimidating tiers remained, but the atmosphere had shifted, and saw species who had been enemies learning to work together. She saw representatives from quarantined worlds who had been freed and given their own chances. She saw Doss, no longer hiding, sitting in a seat marked Anomaly Advocate. The small creature had helped hundreds of unusual beings navigate a system that finally had room for them. And she saw Melos. The High Arbiter had watched humanity for 10 years. Every triumph, every failure, every moment of both. Ambassador Riley, Melos said, present your final report, and stepped onto the platform. She carried no device, no data, no prepared speech. Just 10 years of memories. You asked for proof that humanity could be trusted, she began. I cannot give you that, because trust is not proven. It is built, day by day, interaction by interaction, through failures and recoveries and choices made when no one is watching. She looked around the chamber. In 10 years, humans have made mistakes. We have had criminals among the stars, conflicts that should have been avoided, moments where we showed exactly the violence you feared, and paused. But we also had a doctor named Sarah who developed a treatment that saved the Holith from extinction. An engineer named David who solved an energy crisis that had plagued the Venery for centuries. A teacher named Maria who helped a species that had forgotten how to dream remember why dreams matter. The chamber was silent. We are not saviors. We are not threats. We are just another species trying to figure things out. Some of us are wonderful. Some of us are terrible. Most of us are somewhere in between. And smiled slightly, just like everyone else. Melos stood. The chamber tensed. 10 years of waiting came down to this moment. I have watched your species closely, the High Arbiter said. I have seen the violence I expected, the ambition, the capacity for harm. Melos moved toward Anne. But I have also seen something I did not expect. Something that changed my calculations. And held her breath. I saw humans fail, Melos continued. And then I saw them feel shame for their failures. I saw them admit mistakes. Apologize. Change. Grow. The metal being stopped directly in front of Anne. The Unified never did that. They never admitted error. They never changed. That is why they were dangerous. Melos raised one arm. The gesture and remembered from 10 years ago. The human trial is complete. Ambassador Riley, your species has not proven itself perfect, but it has proven itself capable of growth. That is enough. The High Arbiter looked at the council. I vote to grant humanity full membership. The quarantine protocols are permanently suspended. The chamber erupted, not in anger this time, in something like celebration, and felt tears on her face. She did not try to hide them. Later, after the votes and the ceremonies and the speeches, and returned to the deep archive one last time. The pods were empty now. Every frozen anomaly had been awakened over the past decade. Given chances they had never expected to receive, point one of them sat waiting for her. A being from a species humanity had never encountered, with skin like midnight and eyes like twin suns. They say you broke the whole system, the being said, and laughed softly. I just refused to accept that the test was over when they said it was. And now, and looked at the empty pods. At the chamber that had held so much fear for so long. At the galaxy beyond, full of species who were finally learning to trust each other. Now the real test begins, she said. For all of us. She walked out of the archive and did not look back. On her desk, back in her quarters, her original anomaly designation sat in a frame. Someone had added a note in alien script. It had taken her years to translate, the best kind of variable, and smiled and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning. 7 billion humans were waking up, go to work, loving and fighting and dreaming. They did not know how close they had come to being caged forever. They did not need to know. What mattered was what came next, what they would choose to become. The test was never really over. That was the point.